Um, there is something about storytelling, the power of a good story. It does all sorts of things, but where do you start? When you've got an idea, how do you turn that into a story?
You know, at least the way I approach a story, because I know there are these writing courses now, there are these self-help books on writing. I'd actually tried that for my first book, Bottles of Melua, because before that I did absolutely no fiction. Nothing, not in school, not in college, nothing. I was as left-brained as they come. I graduated in mathematics, did an MBA from IIM Calcutta. I was a banker for 14 years. But those self-help books, those algorithms on how to write, they were a complete flop. So I write through instinct. So it's almost like I discover the story while writing as much as the readers may discover it while reading. So I just let the instinct guide me. It may seem a little strange, but I genuinely believe it's a blessing. And that as a fiction writer, I am not the creator, I'm just a channel, and the blessing comes from somewhere else. My job is to let it flow.
Do you really just start at the beginning and so let's find out where this goes? Do you not have a plan, a sort of a start, a middle, and an end?
No, I don't make an entire story flow. What I do have usually, because my first series was a 3-book series, my new series is a 5-book series. I have the ending in my mind usually, and usually right down to the last paragraph. I don't know what's the journey to that ending. That I actually discover while writing. That's why I enjoy it so much, because when I write, when I open the laptop, a parallel universe opens up and I record what I see. That's why I love it so much. It's like only I get to enter that universe and see it. And I can actually hear the characters, I feel their emotions. I love it. I love the job that I do.
Share it with
and I get paid for it.
Even better. Jeffrey Archer, what is your process? Do you have a start, a middle, and an end when you plan your stories?
No, I'm very much like Amish. I haven't got a blooming clue where I'm going. I get up at 5:30 in the morning, start at 6, and I start praying that something will come. I confess that I have sometimes a sort of ending in my mind, but frankly, by the time I get there, it's changed completely. Amish and I have a big thing in common. We are storytellers. That is a God-given gift. Neither of us that I'm aware of are opera singers. We do not play the violin, and we are not ballet dancers. It's a God-given gift. And too many people think that writing is something they can just do one weekend. I've been doing it for 40 years, and it's damned hard work. And if any of you out there want to join in, and I hope you do, don't think it will be easy, because it won't be.
But that's the trick, isn't it, Lord Archer? You make it look easy, so that's why people think that they could do it. But so therefore, talk to me about the story. It is difficult because there is an art to it, there is a craft to it. And we're here, we're talking about business and what business may learn from storytelling and narratives and how they may use that to either sell stuff or make money. The power of a narrative and a story is so important. But it's something we think we probably all have in us, but as you've just touched on, we don't. So what is that power of a story?
It's very hard to actually describe it because it is a gift. You can't, very difficult to describe. And it's kind of you to say that the easier you make it look, the more convinced people are that they can do it. But don't let's kid ourselves. I do 14 drafts of every book. And even after 40 years and 30 books, it isn't getting any easier. If anything, it's more demanding, because you know, if you've got your fans out there, particularly in India, where they write long letters to me, that they're very demanding. And you can't let the standard down. So if anything, it's become, from what you, to use your word, the craft point of view. Yes, the craft is there, but you've still got to do 14 drafts to make it look, if I may use your words, as if it's very easy.
And Amish, the reason I ask about start, middle, and end, because we're talking about leadership here, and you know what we're often told is leadership needs to be decisive. It needs to say, "This is our goal. This is where we are going, and you're all coming on this journey with me." There are lessons there, but if yours doesn't have a start, middle, and an end, you couldn't run a business, for example, like that, could you? Saying, "I'm not really sure where we're going, but we'll probably work it out."
Yeah, but listen, how it works with most leaders, if you actually think about it, and use the example of our Prime Minister at this point in time, in India, or someone like a Steve Jobs in Apple, they would know where they want to go, right? They wanted to make a product which would, and Steve Jobs, for example, a product which would have 1,000 songs in your pocket, right? How it's actually going to get there, what are the tech specs that will come up, that you discover actually on the way, and then you experiment. If you remember, there's this very famous incident where it just struck Steve Jobs after lots of development that actually he just wanted one button, right, on the phone. I don't know if you remember that. And his designers thought he'd gone mad, right? But it just struck him that actually this is what is needed. It's the same way if you think about the Indian Prime Minister, right? He sets up a goal that say, that we have to make sure that there's water in every house, right, within so much time. What is the way there? He just sets up the target, and then they work it out. Now, where is the storytelling skill required? How do you incentivize your followers to go for it? That's where a leader has to be like a storyteller. He actually has to see that dream, believe that dream, convince others that it's worth it walking the path towards that dream, and frankly, you don't know what the path will be, right? That's what a good leader is. A good leader in many ways has to be a good storyteller. I think Steve Jobs had said that among the most powerful jobs in the world is that of a storyteller, because you command that which is most precious, which is your attention.
Yeah. Well, and the attention point is interesting, Lord Archer, isn't it? Because actually we talk about stories taking us on a journey, but that journey is usually quite convoluted. There might be a few red herrings along the way. It is maybe sometimes complicated. How do you spin a tale like that? How do you tell a story that is so complicated, has so many different possible endings, and then bring all those different narratives together?
Yes, you're quite right. The problem is it mustn't become convoluted. It mustn't become complicated. And that, for a storyteller, is the most difficult thing of all. If you're going to have twists and turns and something happening that even you are surprised by, the reader must be able to flow easily and move on. They mustn't say, "Oh, I didn't quite understand that. I might have to go back and find out who that character is," or no. You must keep it moving. The reader must not want to stop turning the page. Now, if, Ben, you go further and you say to me, "Jeffrey, how do you do that?" Sorry, I don't know.
How do you do that? Your latest book, the Clinton Chronicles, isn't it? It's your iconic series. Many decades, many characters. And I wonder how you then balance what you've just told me, because it can't be convoluted, but it's over so many generations, so many different characters. How do you bring them together?
It's a very good question, because the truth is you have to keep on reading it and thinking about it and with 7 books, you've kind of got to hold them all in your mind, because you know you've got devoted readers who are watching every move. I had a great privilege yesterday of I do charity auctions, and I did a charity auction for Simon Cowell. And Simon told me that he'd read, can you believe this? He'd read the Clinton Chronicles 12 times. So of course he would have spotted something if I'd made any mistake. But I think what Amish and I have in common is we're very luckily have that weird memory, because memory is an important word here too, that it remains in the mind. Because if it didn't, you'd get letters from readers saying, "Dear Jeffrey, on page 144, you said he was 14 years old. But by the time I got to page 336, I've worked out that he was 121. How did you manage that? And that's something you dread the whole time, particularly from Indians who read it so carefully that they will pick up the slightest mistake.
Amish is nodding along with you here. And do you feel a responsibility, Amish? Because you retell a lot of Indian mythology, don't you, for a modern audience, reinterpret it in a different way. There must be a responsibility that goes with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and I think perhaps what makes it easier for me is I genuinely worship the gods that I write on. I don't do what could be called creative liberties. Right. What I do is a respectful reinterpretation, right? And what that does, it almost instinctively brings the story out in a certain way, in which even if you take an interpretation, it doesn't lead to any controversies. And the proof of the pudding is in the eating. I've been doing this for nearly 13, 14 years now. You can Google me, you won't find any controversies. I am as boring as I look. There's nothing to go on.
I agree.
I mean, on those myths, I mean, they play such an integral part in India's story too, while we're talking about stories as well. And it gives the world a cultural reference point. It gives people a way into India, maybe through writing that they wouldn't get anywhere else. Do you feel that responsibility too? That this isn't just about you telling a story about something you're interested in. It's about telling India's story to the world.
Yes, it does. And it's also because of the point of time that India is in. This is a phase in history where India is rising after centuries of decline. We suffered brutal invasions. Many of our great universities, we had the oldest universities in the world. For most of human history, we were the wealthiest land on earth. Angus Madison, a brilliant British economic historian, had calculated GDP across the past 2,000 years, across lands, across the world. And India was by far the wealthiest land on earth for, I think, 14 or 15 of the last 20 centuries. And then for another 3 centuries, we were number 2. We just had a bad 2 centuries, where we kind of collapsed. Can happen to anyone. And we are rising once again. Now, at this point of time in history, I think the way any Indian, the way we present ourselves and our country, there is a certain amount of responsibility because we are rising after so long once again. And that certainly we Indians feel it a lot more emotionally. It's not just about me as an author, but about me as an Indian. I'm sure every Indian feels that too. When they're abroad, they're ambassadors for the country. One of the reasons Indians like Jeffrey so much is that when he speaks of India, he speaks with fondness and love, and we appreciate that. We like that. That's why he's so popular here. It's not just, and of course his books are brilliant, but it's the way he speaks of India. We are rising after many centuries of decline. Obviously, we're a little emotional about it.
I don't agree. You're a tiresome one. The Indians are tiresome. We've now got an Indian Prime Minister. And the cricket tomorrow, we'll kill you in the cricket tomorrow, Amish. I mean, there'll be a good ending to that story.
The Empire Strikes Back.
Who said I love the Indians? I adore them. And I'll tell you one of the problems. One of the problems I have with Indians is that they're so ambitious and aspiring. I have to stay awake night and day fearing which is the next one who'll get me. They're after it.
So we shouldn't expect a book on Indian history from you, Jeffrey, at any point?
No. I'm stopped in the roads in India regularly. In every major city, people kindly come up and talk to me. But I say to them, I can't write the Indian novel. That can be done by Amish because he has the feel for it. He has a history of it. I'm an Englishman. I write about the theatre. I write about big business. I write about politics, even auctioneering. I write about the things I know about. But R.K. Narayan taught us, the more sensible among us, that you can only write about a small village in India if you've lived in a small village in India. So no, I always say to my kind Indian fans, forget it. I will not be writing about you lot.
A final thought from each of you, because we're talking about business and what businesses can learn from storytelling. And, find me any sort of shop or business that now doesn't try to flog us a story. They'll tell us that the recipe is their grandmother's, it's been in the family for decades. They'll tell us stories about their history and when they were founded. But storytelling is more important than that. It's about who that business is, what it stands for, the messaging that they put out. Jeffrey, if there's anyone in this room running businesses that say, what is my story? How do they craft that? How do they tell people about who they are?
It's not easy. And a lot of people do come to me and say, Jeffrey, I've got a wonderful story. And they know they can't tell it. 9 times out of 10, sadly, they haven't got a wonderful story. So I say to them, have you murdered your wife? And they say no. And I say, well, let's move on. To be fair, everyone's got a good short story in them, an incident that happened in their life that is unique and different. And those I search for from real people every day of my life. And if I'm very lucky, I get 3 or 4 a year.
Use the word short. Short story. No one needs a long personal story, do they?
Sorry?
I said no one needs a long personal story. You said everyone's got a short story in them. I don't know, that's the point, isn't it? Keep it simple.
Everyone has. Though to be fair, Mary and I were on a cruise around Britain, and I sat next to this man who said, I've been reading your books, Jeffrey, and I've got your next story for you. And I thought, oh, Gordon, not again. Here we go. How will I get through dinner? And he made it worse when he said, I can tell you how to steal the crown jewels. I thought, oh, everybody knows that Colonel Blood 400 years ago failed to steal the crown jewels, and no attempt has been made ever since. And I sat down and thought, I got to sit through this dinner. It's unbearable. And then he told me how to steal the crown jewels. And I just couldn't believe it until he said that he worked for the royal household. And that's how I got Traitor's Gate. He told me in 2 minutes the whole story of Traitor's Gate. But the point you're making is someone has to sit down and write the 400 pages.
I also love how you can tell a story about being told a story that you then made into a story. And that is the power. That is the power of storytelling.
That's Inception storytelling.
So, Amish, to the point, what will people in this room learn about storytelling? How fundamental it is? I mean, you talked about Apple. Yes, brilliant example. But what can we all take away when it comes to...
Oh, no, wait a moment, Ben. Wait a moment, Ben. Before you answer that, Amish, I was in your country recently, and a lady came into the room and locked the door, which was quite frightening. And she sat down. You can answer this, Amish, because I'm sure you've got the same story in another form. And she said, I want you to tell me the secret, Jeffrey. I promise I won't tell anybody. And I said, there is no secret. It's a God-given gift. She said, no, I promise I won't tell anyone. I said, I've got nothing to tell you. She said, I won't tell anyone. I said, right. I live in Cambridge, on the Cam. Every morning I get up, I go down to the river and I dig a hole, and there's a story waiting for me. She ran away, unlocked the door, and I haven't seen her since.
That is storytelling.
Do you have a version? Are people asking you for your secrets?
Oh, there are I think the most fun versions I have is because I have rituals. I don't know how the story comes. I just have rituals. I listen to music usually while writing, and I eat lots of cream biscuits, the kind I got when I was a kid. For some reason, that just triggers the flow, right? I have various readers of mine at Litfest, etc. They come to me with packets of cream biscuits. That here, take this and write quicker.
That's the way to do it. That's exactly what I'd love to do. And the secret then, what can people take away from this about the power of a good story?
Look, you may know where you want to go, but storytelling is essentially the art of grabbing attention. It just comes instinctively. You just have to be able to read the room, read the person you're talking to, and just comes instinctively what you must say. This cannot be planned. On that, I agree with Jeffrey completely. It's a blessing. If you have it, make sure you use it for good. Make sure you use it well.
It's been such a joy to talk to both of you. Thank you. A really wonderful, entertaining session. Amish Tripathi, thank you for being with us. And Lord Jeffrey Archer, grateful for you being with us. Enjoy the
Thank you very much indeed, as always, for coming back. And pay attention tomorrow when England will thrash India on the cricket field.
Yeah, that's not happening.
No one is agreeing with you, Jeffrey, here. No one is agreeing.